Plugin of the week comes from NEOLD. It's the U2A. This is an emulation of the Teletronics LA2A famous opto compressor. And what they've done here is taken it to another level because, like any emulation, you think, well, what's so special of this? Why would I want this over any of the others? Does it sound better than any of the others? Or what does it offer that's different from any of the others? And that's what we're going to go over here, right? So in its most simple design, all you have is an output gain control and basically a threshold, right? Which just effectively what it does in reality is it adjusts the gain of the sidechain circuit, right? Of the control circuit that determines how much gain reduction you have. So that's really all you have. It's not adding any gain. Some designs work that way. It does only to the detector circuit. The gain makeup here is the output gain. Now, what NEOLD has done here is they've kind of taken a few things and allowed you to expand beyond those basic controls. One control that does actually exist is the R37 control here, which allows you to control the detector circuit EQ path, right? So, and many of the emulations will give you this. So essentially you either have flat response going in, or as you dial this back, you're attenuating low frequencies. So it'll be more responsive to transients. And you'll most likely end up having to adjust the peak control, right? Your threshold accordingly, right? So that'll make it a bit more responsive, right? So those are the basic features that you find in almost all of them. Limit compress switch, okay? So that just basically gives you a limiter versus compressions, hard knee versus soft knee, higher ratio versus lower ratio. What's interesting here, though, and this is something that when you start to research, you find out that the photo optic cell, which is the T4 circuit. Don't have my notes here, but they only really last like about a year or two, and then they need to be replaced. And so, in most studios that I worked in, I don't think that they were ever replaced, and I don't think this was sort of a common knowledge type of thing ever that I saw. Perhaps it was happening in the background. I just didn't happen to be there. But what they've done is it reacts differently. It doesn't stop working, but it reacts differently over time. And so what they've done is they've added in an aging factor. So when you have it here, it's like a brand new. So it'll be most responsive, and then it will become less responsive, but also change the color of the sound a bit as well. So now you have that as a variable control. One of the other things that can be sometimes dissuading from working with an LA2A is that the release may not be giving you the characteristic movement that you want. And as with a lot of the vintage compressors, what you'll find is the reactiveness of the release is different based on the gain reduction. And so often what you're fishing for in working with an LA2A is finding whether you're getting that kind of movement that you want in the 1 to 3 dB of gain reduction range, the 3 to 7 dB gain reduction range, or the 7 to 10 dB gain reduction range. And when you figure out what range you're in and you get that kind of, the sort of movement that you expect, it gets slower as you go further, as you might expect, as it kind of builds in a memory with the light that sort of slows it down, you get more responsiveness with less gain reduction. Here, you have the ability to adapt that. So it adjusts here. I assume the 75% would be where it's supposed to be. You can make it faster or you can make it slower. And that's sort of a great feature to have. So it gives you that extra adjustment. Some people got into the Summit compressor, which is opto, which gives you adjustable attack and release time. So it'd be something similar to that, only variable and also with the LA2A sound. There's also a separate drive control. So when you drive the output gain, it runs through an amplifier, which runs through tubes. And what they've done here is they've made this sort of just a naked gain control and then had a separate drive control so you could have saturation or adjust the saturation amount on top of what you would normally have. So otherwise you would have to drive the output gain, and unless there was a separate output control on the plugin, then you would just get a crap load more gain. Almost slipped there. And then there's the wet dry control over here, power switch for A being in and out. Okay, enough of me blabbing. Let's kind of go over some sounds. So a classic use case for this would be a bass. So let's just plug in a bass and get a sound and kind of go over a little bit of what we have here. Well, hold on. It actually helps if I load up the bass here. Let's try this. You hear how different that is from the new, right? This is cleaner. This is smoother sounding. But I can also adjust the release time characteristic from here. So let me go back to the new, where it's a little bit more responsive. Let's go to a place where it kind of moves a little bit faster. So you could hear like how much control and you know, some of it is subtle for sure, but giving you a bit more detail in terms of the way that you work with it. Let's go to like a vocal, for example, here, and hear how that sounds. Here we go. Load up the right one.
Wrecking home.
Let's go to the verse.
Who I've been is not who I am.
So this is like I'm setting this up with the aging set up higher, fast recovery, and what I'm doing here, I have the drive kind of backed off a bit, just to kind of cut a little bit of the edge of the vocals. So listen to it.
Who I've been is not who I am. Been walking this road where no one's dead. Been wrecking homes, breaking hearts without a care.
Isn't like that the really great warmth that's added in it? I think the aging has a bit to do with that. Let's add a little drive in there.
Who I've been is not who I am. Been walking this road where no one's dead. Been wrecking homes, breaking hearts without a care. Left a trail of tears, lived in fear, and now you're scared.
So a nice way you could feel how much body, right, that it brings into the voice, and also a smoothing effect, which is exactly what you would want to use an LA2A for. Here's another example here where just feeding some strings into. raise this up a little bit. So here's where I can kind of roll off a little bit of the low end to just kind of get it to move a little bit, not get too caught up in the low end bumps. A little Glock in there for extra measure. You could hear like the richness and the warmth that it brings in, and just having those extra controls with the aging, the recovery. The drive gets a little fuzzy to my ear, but that's actually very true to the original. Because whenever I tried to overdrive an LA2A, it got that same very, very fuzzy sound. That may work for more special effect type of things, where you're really going for that obviously fuzzy type of effect. May not work as well for vocals, like you could hear it kind of digging into the top end there, but you could always pull it right out, and then you have that control or the ability to set that. I love this aging control because it's interesting that cranking it all the way up actually reminds me a bit more of the sound that I remember than the clean one. And I think mostly it's because in most studios they didn't replace those opto components. Really cool one, a great one. I think even if you own an LA2A, this is certainly one that's worth bringing in just for the option of having different color, the ability to bring in that warmth and kind of be a little bit more, subtle with the adjustments that you make in terms of dialing in a tone or a sound with it, which is a big part of what it does. Plugin of the week from NEOLD, the U2A emulation of the Teletronics LA2A going back, I believe, to the 1950s, way back. That's it. Plugin of the week.